The longer you play the Fallout series, the more you come to realize that most factions are carefully disguised scams. On the outside, they may appear just and righteous, while in the background, they are using you for all you're worth. Some of them just want to hoard everything for themselves, while others barely find you worthy of being alive, being open about why they're tolerating your existence in their presence. So that's why today we're going to rip off their masks and explore why Fallout factions all suck. Steal indoctrination. If you're a fan of the classic games, you know that part of the charm in the factions are the interactions between them. Many of their bitter rivalries were established well before you were implicated in the struggles between them. So let's kick things off with a faction whose negligence has nearly brought ruin to the wasteland and all life. Let's talk about the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, the Brotherhood doesn't need much in terms of an introduction. They have repeatedly been a powerful faction that aids our protagonists in defeating whatever greater evil is haunting the wasteland. Having such an important faction up first doesn't mean that it is the least hateful one. They suck as much as the other faction that we are going to talk about later on in the video. They claim that they try to be strict isolationists, reaffirming to the player that they're merely stockpiling pre-war technology to keep it out of the wrong hands. This is not the case at all. We frequently see them directly pitted against all other factions. So one might question if they've become the very people that their doctrine was established against. In Fallout 4, they very clearly have a rivalry with the Institute, the Minutemen, and even the Railroad. While it makes sense for them to hate the Institute for their use of cybernetic doppelgangers to spy and sabotage every other faction, the Railroad is firmly against this, and only wants to allow those fully sentient doppelgangers to become something more than pawns to the Institute. You'd think that alone would win the Brotherhood's support. Wrong, as they're opposed to the Minutemen only because the Minutemen are an external force. While they have to be coaxed into full-blown war, they're all too willing to mock the protagonist's decisions to side with them. Their opposition to even the good-aligned factions makes it clear as day that they are willing to do anything in their power just to have control over everyone else, taking no time to establish strict checkpoints and patrols soon after arriving in the Commonwealth. Now, I can't exactly blame them. The wasteland is a very tough place, and survival of the fittest is the most important law at the end of the day, but how can you possibly go and exterminate people out of a vague suspicion that they're up to no good? Siding with the Brotherhood and completing their full quest line requires you to completely wipe out the Railroad, though there is only one way to avoid this, and it requires completing the Brotherhood's quest line up until when they ask you to carry out that grim task. From there, you have to side with another faction to figure out how to get to the Institute, and then return to the Brotherhood with the news. So sure, at the moment they'll forget their plans to exterminate the Railroad, but just until the Institute is destroyed. From there, we are left to assume that they could decide to help each other going ahead, but who knows? Maybe the protagonist can resolve all of the current problems that they have, or they're one of the many issues the Commonwealth Brotherhood is facing at the time of the television series. When the Enclave began to venture forth from the oil rig, the Brotherhood was already aware of them but didn't establish contact. But they chose to maintain a network of spies to watch over their advance, leaving the Enclave to grow into a much deadlier threat by the time of Fallout 2. But the Brotherhood has shown a willingness to go to war with factions like the New California Republic. The Enclave, because the Brotherhood was never actively waging war against them, were able to flee to the capital wasteland after the Chosen One destroyed the oil rig. This created the whole new situation that led to a brutal war for control of the capital wasteland in Fallout 3. With their later attack on the NCR, the spies they plant around the wasteland, and their hoarding of advanced technologies, this tells you that they're not all that friendly of a faction. Okay, these are the most obvious reasons that make them suck. So now let's talk about your internal structure and how bad it can be. For starters, their ranking system focuses on placing the most indoctrinated amongst them at the top, leaving little room for the occasional free thinker to make a name for themselves. Now, what I do find good about this system is that members can only get orders from their direct boss, and the boss over in your squad can only receive orders from higher-ups. No, higher-ups cannot just go to give you orders. They have to go to the process just to give you a mission, due to the Brotherhood rewarding loyalty and the acquisition of new technologies. But don't overlook how this encourages the seizure of what could be the life source of other civilizations. Sparing a civilization from the loss of a vital technological resource can get you locked up for insubordination, and get a demotion or far worse, latrine duty. While friendly fire is normally considered betrayal amongst other factions, by the time of the television series it's not uncommon amongst Brotherhood Knights to brutally engage in one-on-one fights to the death, where the victor is praised for taking out their opponent by any means. And just to wrap things up, let's talk about money, the problem of the world. In the early days of the Brotherhood, their only currency had been loyalty. Members were supplied better technology for completing honorable duties. But during their war with the New California Republic, they would seize the opportunity to steal their gold reserves. Gold is vital in the production of many electronics, and can be used to exchange for caps or technologies without having to outright seize or murder for. That's something that every member of the Brotherhood is indoctrinated to carry out. All this makes it clear that the Brotherhood sucks, because they are very strict with their own internal rules. If you are not being careful, you are bound to make a mistake that might earn their enmity. While the Brotherhood of Steel is fanatical by design, this next faction is one that you might consider lunatics. With every other faction having their own flaws, the Children of Atom and their beliefs particularly give me nightmares every time I encounter them. Radioactive religion. While it might be controversial to imply that religion often breeds extremism, and this faction has bred many extremist sects that continue to reap a toll on the wasteland. What makes the Church of the Children of Atom stand amongst the other factions is that they have their people brainwashed to believe that exposing themselves and others to harmful levels of radiation is an act that brings them and their victims closer to their god, Atom. The Children of Atom that you encounter in the Fallout 4 Far Harbor DLC is no different. These guys are lunatics, to refresh your memory. And the entirety of the island setting of the DLC is covered by a dense radioactive fog that often causes people to go mad, and in some cases, death. Yeah, I believe death is the best case scenario if you have to live fighting against the fog and the fanatics over at the Church of Atom. The cultists here worship the fog because of its radiation, which puts them directly into conflict with the saner residents there, because they think that using purifiers that settlements use to push away the fog harms Atom. We all know that being exposed for so much time can cause radiation sickness, ghoulification, or other physiological changes. But these guys are just built differently, because some of them can live in zones with high levels of radiation without having any consequences. If you're crazy enough to join the Church of Atom, as a form of initiation, you are given the task of locating a spring of holy water and take a drink from it. Getting to the spring is a task of its own. The weak don't survive the journey, and many that do turn into ghouls. In the worst, the sheer level of radiation is enough to put most wastelanders to a swift death, and in the best scenario, you survive the poisonous waters and are guided by a stealth boy using cultist that pretends to be a guiding spirit that takes you to a shrine worshipped by the cultists. This makes me question how insane a faction must be to just send their initiates to die pointlessly. Radiation exposure might not be an immediate death sentence, but in the long run, you are going to lose the race, and all because someone saw a vision after drinking some toxic water. Nothing proves that you are really immune to the radiation of the fog if you survive, just that you're still alive. And that's not even the worst of it. Imagine a faction that doesn't seek to kill you, but solely aims to capture and transform you into something completely different, erasing who you are in the process. Mutation unification. Imagine having in the shadows a super mutant kill squad whose sole loyalties are to you and your goals, while your public face pretends to be a good old church. So to start talking about them more in depth, the achievement to transform human bodies into super dope and powerful allies is the pure focus of this faction, the Unity. By its name, we can get a little spoiler of what his objective is: to create all humankind in the Commonwealth into super mutants so they can be controlled by this hive mind power that the Master has. Sounds reasonable, right? Or, well, I think that in practice they don't preserve people. They take it all for themselves like goblins. They basically hoard it. I bet you are wondering how it is possible that they can have their minds connected. There are some points that we have to connect first before we can answer this question, so bear with me. The Master was born as a result of an expedition to uncover where horrific mutants were spawning from. A group of wastelanders led by a man named Richard Grey would find the Mariposa military base and uncover the horrors held within. During the ensuing struggle against the mutants and robotic security, Richard Grey would be injured, and the surviving members of his team would flee from Mariposa. Exposed to the FEV held within the military base, Richard Grey would transform into the Master. He would undergo a very unique transformation. He would find himself with the ability meld with computers and developed increasingly powerful telepathic and psychokinetic abilities. Think Vecna, but more mechanical. To keep it simple, they learned that they cannot always attack caravans to get their guinea pigs, although the people always blame monsters. Well, they are not wrong either. In the long run, they were going to lose the race. So what better idea than create a church? Yeah, another faction using religion to achieve their goals. Children of the Cathedral is the first line before the nightmare happens. They are playing the good cop in this story. They are led by apostles in charge of establishing hospitals and churches in the cities of the wasteland. Then they bring you to the FEV vats, where you are forced to undergo a horrific change into a super mutant, forgetting every detail of your past life. Now that it is one heck of an evil plan. Sadly, they didn't become the main villain of the series. Just imagine how, instead of a Commonwealth struggling against the Institute and their synths, the sole survivor instead escapes Vault 111 to find a world full of super mutants. Had Unify been successful, that would have been reality. It's already hard enough for anyone to survive with the dumber super mutants around every corner, but it would have been all the more dead if the Master had the time to read the East Coast and made everyone in between into his intelligent super mutants. If you happen to trust the Cathedral and seek their help or refuse, then you might become the next. In this reality, the population of Earth would be stagnant, as super mutants cannot reproduce. This fact is one that, when revealed to their leader, the Master outright terminates himself, putting an end to unity and his vision of a future where everyone was united and had perfect super mutant bodies. This being said, we can conclude that kidnapping people to conduct human experiments and forcibly mutating them makes the unity an evil beyond comprehension. Where the super mutant Master used mutation to try to save humanity from the harsh world that was birthed on the day that the bombs fell, this next faction sought alternative means. They would rebuild humanity through cybernetics and control, replacing anyone who got in the way. Synthetic domination. As the main villains that you can also choose to side with, these guys are no better than any of the others. In fact, they are far worse. Since the bombs fell, the Institute has remained hidden. Remaining hidden within their underground facility, they have been researching for over 200 years to create the synthetic humans that would come to be known as synths by the denizens of the Commonwealth. They may at first seem to be human, with all the characteristics of sentience. They are far from it. The Institute can modify, delete, and even program new memories into these synthetic humans. Though they are programmed to with complete loyalty, more than one has left the domains of the Institute, but those without luck got captured again, and their system gets overwritten so that they can be enthralled by the Institute once more. They can be found all over the Commonwealth, as they are often sent out in the pursuit of knowledge. When the Institute feels that a civilization has grown too large and could pose a risk to them, they will replace their leaders with synth doppelgangers and control them from within, or simply wipe them out. This happened to a town that uncovered pre-war research on reactor efficiency. The Institute sent over a synth to get hold of that research, and at the moment that they refused to hand over the research, they got deleted from the map. Well, it is the least you can expect from the main villain. There is no middle ground. It is all or nothing. These guys are the worst that there can be. But they weren't always like it first. For the first few years, they were focused on pushing technology forward, and in the process, they opted to hide below ground to stay protected from the horrors of the post-nuclear world. They believed that their synths could save humanity and reach a new golden age, but they needed time to perfect their vision. Isolated from the outside world, the scientists continued their work, disregarding the mayhem and destruction occurring outside of their facility. As their synths became increasingly advanced, they would begin to step out and even attempted to work peacefully with the people of the Commonwealth. These are using first-generation synths to help create a new stabilized government, but mutual mistrust and infighting ended that relationship quickly, and they returned to their isolation. As their synths became more human-like, they would send them out into the upstart civilizations of the Commonwealth in order to conduct reconnaissance missions. A defective synth caused the famous Broken Mask incident. Well, one of their synthetic spies was conducting a mission at a bar in Diamond City when suddenly he malfunctioned, took out a revolver, and shot the bartender. After that execution, he would begin shooting at the other patrons. It killed 10 dead people before the guards finally managed to take it down. It was then that they inspected its body, and to their surprise, they discovered that it was a synth. With this, the Institute became a major red flag in the Commonwealth. A boogeyman everyone fears could be lurking around any corner. If this wasn't enough, later on they just decided to massacre the Commonwealth Provisional Government. This was only because the Institute wanted to create a new form of government, but instead of negotiating, they just sent their synths to eliminate everyone. These guys sure know how to make an example on how to suck real good, they do, while pretending to be noble in their goals. But I mean, look at all the humans they have replaced or killed just to have things their way. They were even willing to murder the entirety of Vault 111 just to steal a baby from his mother's dying arms. Talk about comically evil. But it's not hard to point the finger at the Institute and declare them evil. But what if I told you that one of the most beloved faction in the Fallout franchise, one that is a staple of the franchise that had grown with mostly every title in the series, is fatally flawed and systematically doomed to repeat the same mistakes that led to the end of the world? The false democracy. What if I told you about a faction that is good, so good that is actually the better of the bunch? Now, with the hopes high up, it also has so many errors that they basically send their people to die so far away from their borders that even communication is impossible. The new California Republic has a lot of reasons to be taken as the good guys of the Fallout franchise. They are actively trying to build society a democracy, are complete with guaranteed rights for all. It sounds like the obvious choice is to side with them each and every time, but looks can be deceiving. Taking a closer look, you'll see that the cracks are everywhere. Their most glaring issue is overextension, an issue paid with the blood of their troopers, the very people who offered their lives in service, hoping to make the wasteland a better place than they were born into. On the surface, everything is a well-constructed ruse, and it may seem obvious, but stick with me a bit more. The NCR is exactly what people want, and that itself is a bit dubious if you ask me. But let's believe them for now. Not everything has to be that bad or a well-concocted lie. They fool their citizens with their constitution, giving them the impression that they're equal. Being treated as a human being instead of some dead weight feels a bit refreshing, and the alternative is slavery and being at the mercy of raiders. In general, we are talking about a serious government, not a shaky coalition of settlements that maintain loose trade to avoid killing one another. The NCR has a well-supplied military that defends its territory. They have actual cities with infrastructure. Putting things into perspective, compared to the wasteland, it looks like a miracle. In the NCR, you can dream about a comfy life through honest work. Okay, so showing the good things only make the bad ones contrast so much harder, but here's it is, just pre-war America all over again. Yeah, a nostalgic and better alternative for anyone just struggling to survive a day in post-apocalyptia. At the same time, you have to understand what having the exact same system means and what comes with it, the population having the exact same mindset of a world that simply doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, you got it right. We are also talking about the same problems that can lead us right back to what caused the Great War in the first place. So, not everything is that good as it can seem. Nothing makes this more clear than New Vegas, where I find the NCR in a pretty bad position, and that didn't happen by chance. The NCR made a lot of bad decisions before getting there. One of the most pivotal issues that they're facing is really simple, actually. Their forces are stretched way too thin. The NCR wanted to reach the Hoover Dam before anyone else. To achieve this, they made a lot of hasty decisions with poor planning resulted in massive governmental debt and cost a huge toll in human lives. The military being rushed and overextended across massive territory is a terrible idea. You lose a lot of power and control this way, leading to poor supply lines and weak security to newly annexed regions, which causes raiders to have their way within your territory. Poor communication with troops at places like Camp Forlorn Hope leads to poor military decision-making, and weak supply lines causes soldiers to be under-equipped when it comes time to fight. What this means for starters is that the soldiers who are fighting for your cause are in a perpetual state of being exhausted and basically waiting to lose, so morale is basically inexistent and fighting is a word that doesn't exist anymore. We have camps that don't even have medical supplies or communication between outposts for a new civilization that's pretty bad and is a death sentence for those poor souls on the front lines with no way of calling for backup. Meanwhile, NCR leadership sits far away, buried in paperwork and bureaucracy that don't help anyone because we haven't even started with the really bad parts that start to directly affect the wasteland and who lives there peacefully. So, with laws, we need the power to enforce them. We have been talking a while about the new California Republic and how it looks like the good guys. All about that democracy, having laws and settlements that are more cities than towns. It sounds like exactly what the wasteland needs, but it isn't. And the deeper you look, the more it starts to feel like pre-war America all over again, just with worse equipment and fewer resources. And what is the specific thing that we have been avoiding while talking about a possible new government? If you haven't guessed it yet, taxes what slowly but surely drives a population under the law and order. Expansion, and most exactly, overexpansion was touched briefly, but that wasn't remotely enough of what I wanted to explain. The NCR has a Senate, a president, and the army that is what made them as strong as they think they are, but everything is held together by the same thing, taxes. You could think that they are in some sort of optional path, like they ask for whatever you can sort for them and be helped. No, well, that's the most blatant lie I've ever seen, and most of the wasteland has fallen to this propaganda. Enforcers, as the people call them, are who collect taxes, but that is the good way of saying it. In reality, everything sort of circles down to enforcing to get taxes. What they receive as taxes, you could ask, and well, whatever. Yeah, literally, whatever. First of all, caps, the most standard currency in the wasteland. If you don't have what they could consider enough, then they start taking away whatever you have. Crops, resources like weapons, even your homes could be taken away from you. If on the first friendly phase you don't give away whatever quantity of taxes they may find acceptable, then they will send the enforcers, and those who don't care about your illness, family. If you're dying, Barely surviving or haven't eaten in a while doesn't matter. You have to pay. One thing we can be sure about is that most of the time don't get here violently, but they possess such threatening aura that it feels like it. NCR soldiers acting as protectors and are at the same time the people that attack. Ironic, isn't it? You lose whatever support they could give. Oh boy, now you went and done it. There's no coming back from that one. Jokes aside, all of this is nothing more than a bad joke, but follow me on this. I have a few examples that show that this support is a scam, one orchestrated to explode those fears and damage that the people already have, and show promise without delivering anything at all. Prim, for example, is perfect for this. In-game you can explore this city, and for the first visit you can see that the new California Republic is offering to take over law enforcement, and if this is the first approach you have, you can be easily fooled, as you only hear the good parts. NCR support comes with a price, and that is NCR control, NCR rules, and of course the infamous NCR taxation. This, in combination, is basically a leech in your body all the time. And another thing to point out is that accepting that means that the town is no longer free, and it's absorbed by the whole list of infinite debt to the NCR for protection. And we haven't reached the worst yet. Reaching Novak can shatter your vision of the NCR a lot. For example, in this place, the NPCs that live around chat a bit about their life, and one of the principal concerns they have is about their guardians that they pay so much for so little. They complain a lot about being extremely taxed while getting zero in return. No consistent patrols that make them feel a little bit safer. No obvious security, as they are rarely there to protect them in case anything happens, and when something actually happens, they never shows up. So they are starting to hate the NCR with all the reasons of the world. You're paying for a service that might not exist. A scam in all the rulebooks. With those two examples, it is easy to understand my point, and at the same time they keep on expanding because you know the more territory you have, the more taxes you get, and with more taxes, well, you will want more and more. And that loop was ultimately their doom in the long run. The NCR is falling apart logistically and exploring a bit more their bunkers, talking with their people and mostly their leaders. You can also assume that they are rotting politically too. Corruption is too far in to make a good leadership. Holding massive influence over the government was always in the pre-war a solid asset. And now that hasn't changed. The only thing that has changed is that now instead of big companies, we have crazy Brahmin barons, those wealthy elites who basically shape the leadership and lead the soldiers. If you're well versed in history, well, it always tends to repeat itself. So trying to rebuild the world is slowly getting them near a second end, just like the old world did. So yeah, absolutely correct that the NCR could be considered one of the best in terms of safety for the people around, but that doesn't mean much when they are literally bleeding tons and tons of good lives for the ambitions of those who hold a seat of power. Though the NCR might have had the best intentions, it's pitted against another faction that seeks only control, one that is so brutal and evil that its leader plans to absolutely obliterate everything in his path. Rome, once again, Caesar's Legion, one of the most ruthless and brutal factions. A pure evil one, if I have ever seen one. Under Legion rule, slavery is the way of the land. If you violation their laws, there is one simple punishment: the crucifixion. You can even be punished by crucifixion for simply using medication to treat an illness. As Caesar has completely outlawed all non-organic chems, the Legion has only one goal: total domination of the Mojave, and if they can, of the whole wasteland. Ruthless as they are very efficient in their mission with an array of skill in their number. The Legion has assassins capable of infiltrating enemy lines to carry out high-profile decapitations, making them very capable fighters who use technology only when absolutely necessary. Though the Legion controls their massive stretch of territory through sheer brutality, caravan companies who travel through it consider it extremely safe. If you're a friend of the Legion and are between those roads, then you're on some of the safest trails in the whole wasteland. The traders that move around have zero fear of raiders and rarely have nothing more than a bodyguard for the classic rad scorpion. And all that is because they brutally punish crime, and like 90% of the time it is very simple: execution, and call it a day. For a normal explorer and survivor, not having to fight raiders around every corner, the order is absolute, so not everything is good. Still, don't be fooled. We aren't even at the tip of the iceberg. Slavery is the cornerstone of the Legion, and not by chance or because they have to punish some people sometimes. They are the type of soldiers that raid tribes, enslave absolutely every one of them in case they have survived the fight. Ajin who cannot handle the pressure are killed on the spot. Men that can fight and have a bit of athletics must join the army. Women are not permitted to work by law, as they are only seen as objects for reproduction. My point is that they live to conquer, slave what they can, and destroy absolutely everything else, so no culture is preserved, no buildings, no books, and no knowledge. Their leader, Caesar, believes that democracy and freedom was the principal cause of the Great War, so the solution is to crush everyone with an iron fist. By luck or chance for the other factions, this one has a serious weakness, besides their common choice of weaponries, and the fact that they rely mostly on numbers. And that weakness is that this is a faction purely pushed by one man, and one man only. So if that man crumbles, everything falls off, and if you have played the game, that man is already doomed. The Legion dies with Caesar, who presented himself as the son of the Roman god of war, Mars. When he dies, the Legion is doomed to die. Every Fallout faction sucks in their own way. Some it's obvious, while others, it takes diving a little deeper. From the Brotherhood and Steel to Caesar's Legion, we have seen why the Wasteland is doomed to never recover. If you enjoyed this video and want to see Fallout 3 Remastered confirmed everything we know, click the video on the screen.